building digital community in your classroom using Microsoft Teams. So if you watched the video on classroom communication, you'll notice a lot of the students talked about community building, and getting that in an online environment can be very difficult. So what I want to do is just walk you through some of the practical things that I've done in order to build community within my classroom. Okay, so one of the first questions I always get is about cameras. A lot of people ask me, should I have my video camera on? Should I force my students to have their video camera on? And this is what I have discovered after having done a lot of online interaction, hybrid teaching, live meetings with students through Teams, is that I always want to have my camera on. And the reason for that is because as the instructor, I need to demonstrate that, one, I am listening to them. And you can see that through facial cues, right? I'm looking directly at the camera. I'm not looking down at my screen, because if I look down at my screen, it looks like I'm not making eye contact with them. Remember, eyes up at the camera. My camera is slightly higher than my eye height. I have it up on a standing table. If it's lower, right, nobody looks good from down low, right? Looking up at somebody, this just looks a little rough, right? We don't want to see up your nose, right? So we always want to be slightly higher than our camera. We want to look directly at the camera. It indicates that we care. These are all simple things that we're having to adjust that we would do naturally in the classroom, looking at our students when they're talking to them, leaning in and listening. All of those are things that we've learned to do, but we can't do those the same way in the digital environment. So what I would tell you as an instructor is have that camera on. Go ahead and have that clean space behind you so you don't have to use a background. Or if you want to use a background, use the background because you don't have a clean space behind you, right? So I think it's absolutely fine to have a little bit of mess behind you. I think it's totally cool, but I would highly encourage you as the instructor to have a human element of always having your camera on, right? I would never encourage you to have your camera off in a classroom setting where you are leading. Now, if they have all of their cameras turned off, if that's what they want to do, or if because things are a little laggy, I think that's fine. I notice a lot of my students don't feel comfortable being in live settings with their cameras on. I don't push them to do that. I do video discussions as part of online classes, and I can embed those directly into Canvas. And I can show you again how to do that if you'd like to. There's some wonderful tools for that that partner with Canvas to make it very smooth. But in those settings, I make them turn on their cameras just because they can pause it, they can script it, they can re-record it, re-record it, re-record it. And it's good for them to get that practice of looking up into the camera, because when they interview for a job, it's likely their first interview is going to be in a digital environment like this one. So again, I don't force them to have their cameras on during live events. I always have mine on if I am leading the event. I think that's very important, or if I'm presenting. I think that's very important. So again, I think some of us may feel a little uncomfortable with that, but we just got to get used to that. Some of the things I can suggest to you, again, is there are ways to disable where you see yourself. Some people just don't like seeing themselves. And if that's an issue, you could definitely look into disabling the front-facing feature where you see yourself in the camera. I know that can be a little distracting. Again, some people are self-conscious about what's behind them. Some people are self-conscious about the way the lighting works. Usually with lighting, the biggest issue I've seen with people there is that they backlight themselves, meaning there is like some sort of light source behind them. You'll notice in my office, I have no light source behind me. I have a light source over here, and I have a light source over here that are behind the camera. And so one's a window and one's a lamp, right? And so being able to do that enables me to kind of cut down on some of the shadows and stuff that make us feel really self-conscious about the way we look on camera. The other thing I would suggest to you is if you wear glasses, know that if your light sources are higher than you, the angle of incidence where the light's going to hit your glasses and bounce off will be such that it probably won't catch those lights in your glasses. Or if you do wear blue filtered glasses like I do, one of the big issues you can have is that your computer monitor can make your eyes seem blue. What I would suggest at that point is going into your computer settings and choosing a low blue light setting. So on Mac, that's called night shift. And so I forget what they call it in the Windows world, but there is a little button you can click in the settings, the display settings, where it removes a lot of the blue light from the screen, and then you don't get the blue eyes or purple eyes or green eyes when you're recording things or doing live events. Okay, so that's a little blurb on cameras there. Other ways to build community, right? So turn on your camera. Number 2 is keep in contact with your students. And I think this is even like silly things I have found my students absolutely love it. So for instance, this summer I was teaching a Shakespeare course. And so I had this little Shakespeare figurine. And Shakespeare, or sometimes I called him Bill, Bill and I like went everywhere together. We went to the park, and we went to the grocery store, and we went to my backyard, and we sat in my living room, and all this sort of stuff. I did a wedding, actually. I did a wedding cake. And so I just told them, I did an announcement on a Monday morning, and I said, good morning, happy Monday. This week's plays are going to be more lighthearted because we had watched like Titus Andronicus and something else the week before. And so it was kind of depressing, but I did some comedies. Yay. And then I said, hey, Shakespeare, help me bake a wedding cake this weekend. Right. And so I just put pictures in of us doing that. And it was an announcement of something important that was happening that week. It called their attention back to the content, but it was also part of the goofy, funny adventures of Shakespeare, which again, that's part of my personality that may not fit your personality. But I found that having that as a source of conversation, besides just the plays that we were discussing, was very helpful for me in mitigating some of the stress and anxiety that is just kind of happens naturally in summer school, and then has been intensified with the global pandemic. All right. So that's one way, just keeping in contact that way. Here's Shakespeare again. We're at Hobby Lobby. So I said I had to run to Hobby Lobby, right? And he kept saying, out damn spot. We were studying Macbeth that week, right? And so a kind of a throwback to Macbeth, right, with our what we're studying, and kind of re-emphasizing certain things that we've talked about, but at the same time, just kind of goofy and funny, creating that community of learners within my classroom. You'll also see that I use a lot of video announcements rather than just text-based announcements. And again, this is part of humanizing myself in the digital environment. It's very difficult because we're teaching humanities courses, but in a lot of ways we've taken the human out of the humanities just because of the nature of our global situation right now. But there are ways to place it back in. You just have to be very conscientious about that. So for instance, I just did this quick video about something that had happened with Canvas. It had locked some of our discussions. I don't know why, but it did it in an update. And let's go ahead and take a look at what I did here. Hey everybody, I just want to make a quick video announcement. For some reason, Canvas locked all of the Flipgrid discussions for this week. I'm not exactly sure why, and why it was just this week's discussions, but I've gone ahead and I think I fixed the problem. So go ahead and double check the Flipgrid discussions for this week. Make sure you can access them. I want to make sure that everybody can. When you click on them, it should no longer prompt you to enter in some sort of password. It should be just like all the other ones. So let me know if that worked. I hope it did. Okay, so you can see this is just really simple. It was something I shot in my office. It was really fast. Again, I could have texted that. I could have put that in some sort of textual format, but I wanted them to see me. I wanted them to hear me, right? And this had a lot to do with the fact that my courses were asynchronous this summer because a lot of our students, between work and taking care of kids and daycares being shut down and everything else, they just couldn't meet every single day for 2 hours or sometimes 2.5, depending on if they needed questions answered afterward, right, for a summer class. They just couldn't do it, right? So again, I wanted to have those sort of video announcements in there as much as possible. You're also going to notice that I use videos. If you take a look at my courses, if you ever get a chance to look at some of my coursework here, I use the video feature on my phone quite frequently to upload examples of things I have found in the community that exemplify what we're discussing in the course. So I think that I like using the video feature because we can get a lot of the auto caption and making it a little bit more accessible to students who might need that feature by placing it into Teams, because Microsoft does have auto captioning software available. All right, so you'll see that here, if we take a look at this, I actually took a selfie video in Target to exemplify one of the concepts that we were learning in our Introduction to Technical Writing class. Hey everybody, I was at Target because I had to get a card for a student who's getting married, and I saw a great example of some of the concepts we're going to talk about in design. So let me go ahead and flip this around for you so you can see what I'm talking about here. Now, you can see here we have this word right here, anniversary, right?
and you can see anniversary, and then on down the way there's wedding and baby and all of that. So those are all in Helvetica. Helvetica is a certain type of typeface that's super easy to read from really, really far away. But if you'll notice on the end here, this one is in a much thinner typeface. And it also has this script typeface underneath, which is pretty hard to read. So if you look at like something like anniversary versus simply noteworthy, and then the script underneath it is even harder to read, you can see why sometimes our design choices when we're thinking about communicating and doing technical writing really matter, conveying information to users, right? If the point of technical writing is to have a user be able to complete some sort of task or make some sort of decision, then we'd want clarity to be our number one concern. And you can see right here, there's some clarity issues we already have popping up right here in the greeting card aisle. So I thought I'd share that with y'all. I hope y'all are having a great day.
So you can see this is nothing fancy. This is simply me walking around Target needing to get a greeting card. But the deal here, though, is it shows them a couple different things. One, it shows them that what we're talking about is part of a larger context outside of our classroom. And two, it shows them that I'm thinking about them, even when we're not in class at that time, which is very important for our students, many of which are very anxiety-ridden because of what's happening right now within their education. And then also the job market they're looking at entering into upon graduation is the worst we've seen since the 1920s. And so again, any way I can show them that I care about them and I'm thinking about them, I go ahead and try to incorporate that into my class. And so this is just one way to do that. Another thing I do is I make space for community within my class. So I specifically set aside time for community building. So one of the things I do is called coffee talk hours. And this is where I have a special channel set up within our team. And I will once a week, I will pick a time, and it kind of rotates so that different people can come who may be working at different times. I do some of the evenings so that some of my people can put their kids to bed, and some of my students can come after their kids go to bed and all that, right? But basically, it's just a space for us to come and just talk. So this is a flyer you can see here that I just put into our general thread to tell them what this is, a coffee talk. And then we had our first one actually a week ago, and it was wonderful. We just sat around and talked about design, and we talked about what were we learning this semester and some of the problems they've run into so far with the coursework or things they didn't understand. And so just gave us kind of an informal space to just talk and just chat. And they really liked that. Again, because I made space for that. Could they have made an appointment through bookings and talked to me about these things? Of course they could have. I'm always available to them to be able to do that. They can always book that appointment and get on my calendar. But the thing is that I think when I just offer the space, I have found that one, I get more interaction, and two, they're more ready to share what they're actually thinking on a deeper level than if they make that appointment and they initiated and then they're kind of on their back foot because they're wondering, does this person really care about what I have to say? Because I initiated, because they initiated, right, as the student. When I initiate, I find they're a lot more willing to share more with me of what's happening, which ultimately leads to greater community building, which ultimately leads to greater academic success. Also, what I would suggest is using more modalities and kind of get excited about embracing different modalities for submitting things that you think you know what they are. So for instance, this is a discussion post, and this is actually the Canvas discussion post interactive rich text editor. I'm sorry, the rich text editor within Canvas. There is a upload or record media function right here. And so they can actually do video discussion posts rather than just typing out their discussion posts. Now, why does that matter? Well, you saw me using videos in Teams, and they can definitely upload their videos just like I was doing as well. Now, some people like doing these in Canvas because the Canvas Quick Grader is there, or Speed Grader, and the rubrics are all there. But I have found that my students, when they have the video modality, I get much stronger responses to questions and much more deep answers to questions than I do when I actually ask for text-based. And part of that is they're talking their way through and processing what they're thinking about, and they come to this really great kind of final conclusion, but I capture all of that processing and see them kind of work their way through it. And so I think it's important that if you can think about offering more modalities, I think that's very, very helpful. Also, Teams is a great place, a great space for priming. So priming is a term in the pedagogy world, right, where we get students ready to learn, right? We're priming the pump, if you will. So before I was going to talk to them about their portfolio, I just said good morning. I sent this when I got to campus. So we're going to begin our discussion of the final portfolio for our class, and I attached the slides I was going to use as part of our discussion. And so I want you to think through before we come to class, right, the most important ideas that you've learned this semester, because that's going to be important for the executive summary. So I'm already introducing some of these ideas, and they're thinking about these things, right, before they get to class, so that when we get to class, it's not completely new. They've already kind of engaged with some of this in a way that they've maybe thought about on the drive to school, or they thought about it as they were getting their kids ready to go to school, or as they were brushing their teeth, or eating their breakfast, or whatever, right? And then here we are, we come in, we say, okay, we're thinking about this important thing. And they may have nothing actually created, but the fact that I've introduced it already has it somewhere on the mental map. And Teams is fantastic for that, because you can send those messages out super fast. You can just throw your PowerPoint in there, or throw in an instruction sheet or whatever, and it can handle sharing those large file sizes. And because the Teams app for mobile devices like phones and tablets interacts with the other O365 apps such as Word, Excel, it's very easy for them to click on that PowerPoint or to click on that Word document on their phone, and it just opens the Word app, opens it right up. It's very accessible to them. They can skim through it, right? And so I think that this is a great way to really get your students ready to learn. Now, OneNote tabs. Okay, so I'm going to do a whole video on OneNote here in just a second, but I just want to introduce you to a little bit about OneNote. So the glory of the 80s, right? What can I say here? We have these Trapper Keepers. And if you remember Trapper Keepers, these were the super cool 3-ring binders from your 80s experience. And so I think that OneNote, which is built into Teams, is kind of the Trapper Keeper of 2020. Okay, so it's a really cool 3-ring binder-esque thing that's built into this digital environment. So think about, when you think about OneNote, think about 3-ring binder. Okay, so OneNote, and I'm gonna do a whole entire thing with you, is actually located in Teams. If you look at the top, there's posts for your team, files for your team, and a class notebook. That class notebook is automatically placed there if the team was set up as a higher education course. If you're using the courses that were auto-generated for you, they've all been set up as classes. If you're having to create a team, you'll have to select it to be a class style setting to get that tab there. But it's right there. And you can see one of the things I've done in mine is I have these students who are auto-loaded. Everyone who's in the team will get their own little 3-ring binder, if you will. And you'll see here I have their names. And then I have within, I've opened up this person 3-ring binder. I have placed tabs, right? Just like you would if you had a 3-ring binder. I've placed tabs for them. And for this course, I was using Class Notebook specifically for journaling prompts. And so I've gone ahead and I've placed the 3 tabs of journals 1 through 5, journals 10 through 15, and journals 6 through 10, right? Because I was actually picking them up, quote unquote, 3 times in the semester. So I had the 3 different places where I was doing notebook checks. And so you'll see they just had different tabs for them. So here's week 6. We were talking about Medea, and we were talking about our the retellings of Medea in different stories and different formats and how it's been adapted. And I have this little video here by Adele, and I give some of the lyrics, and then I ask them to respond to it, right? So they're able to journal there in their 3-ring binder, and I can get those and pick those up and read them. So I can include interactive elements like videos, web links, things like that, that I normally couldn't if I were asking them to interact. Now, again, I'll explain to you more about that when I get to the OneNote video. We start talking about Class Notebook at a deeper level, about how do you create that, how do you get those pages in everyone's notebook. It's a very simple one-button push. Also, Teams is great for revision-based feedback, okay? So just really quickly, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. If you're interested in this, you can reach out to me. Teams has an assignment feature where they can actually turn in assignments through the Teams interface. So in your general thread, it will open up a Dropbox. They drop their assignments in there, and then you get them. Now, why would you do this versus Canvas, let's say? The things that Teams has that I actually really like is a feature called feedback loop. I'm a firm believer in revision-based grading, right? That we are a revision-based writing process. And for them to not just get a grade and then never look at the document again, but for them to look at my feedback, incorporate that information, rework it, resubmit it. Now, in Teams, you'll see that I have everyone's name here. Then I can get their thing that they've turned in, their paper. Here's their paper. I can open it up in Microsoft Word, or I could just edit it right here in Teams. I like opening it in Microsoft Word. You'll notice here's my full normal Microsoft Word. I'm putting comments for them. You know, maybe you could try this, or how could you reword this? And you're gonna notice here as well, the autosave feature is on. Because what's happening is every time I write a comment, it's saving it back to the copy that they submitted to me. Then when I'm done with it, I hit return. And it returns it to them. And they get that copy with the adjustments. Then they can adjust that and resubmit it back. So what we're doing is we're just pushing the same file back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for revisions. And we're never having to like save it, rename it, re-upload it. I mean, there's none of that happening. It's automatically syncing this because we're sharing just that one file through Teams. Okay, and so I think that this is a wonderful way to kind of foster interactive sort of revision-based feedback, which I think is a wonderful thing that we all kind of know we want to do in our classrooms, but this is an easy way to make that happen. Okay, Teams is also great for collaborative writing, and I would even say superior for collaborative writing. So in Canvas, the way that you do collaboration, if you use the Canvas Collaborate tool, it actually relies upon Google Docs. So what they have to do is students have to enter in a Google password or a Google account, and then it syncs to their personal Google account. But then what's happening is they are mixing their personal Google account and their professional UTA email address. And one of the things I struggle with teaching students is really keeping the personal and professional separated, because their sense of boundary is it's not as strong as it probably should be for a professional environment. And so they're willing to share and connect things a lot more, whereas there's probably some professional discretion we probably should have. So I like to teach keeping those things, professional world and personal stuff, separated in some sense. And I think one of the ways we can do that is by not mixing our digital platforms and maybe sharing too much information with our employer or the university or whatever, and giving them access to that personal data. So again, I think that Teams is better because then they can collaborate in Microsoft Word and all these other things. And I'll show you how to do that in another video. But they can do all of that without having to share personal data or share personal email addresses or things like that. I think that's just a wise and a valuable lesson to teach. So hopefully some of this was helpful to you and helping to build that student community. I'm going to continue to kind of go on, and I even hinted at some of these videos that are coming up about using OneNote, how to do collaboration, how to do breakout groups for collaboration. So hopefully you'll continue and you can find more information that you think will be helpful for you.